Now for wrath, now for ruin, and foxfire burning. Nina. 9-inch nails, Mom screamed out as she rushed to me in her large fox form, and I felt hope that she would save me. But before I could even blink, we were no longer in the rain. We were no longer outside. Mom was no longer there. I began sobbing as that moment of being rescued was snatched away in an instant. Mom had just been right there, and yet, she wasn't fast enough. And now? I was left in the hands of these monsters to do whatever they wanted with me. And I was completely helpless because of the webs binding me and the venom coursing through my body, paralyzing me. We have finally arrived. The one human in this bunch of monsters announced. He had messy blonde hair that was matted down from the rain, while his eyes were a pitch black that gazed at me with contempt and hatred which I could not understand a reason for why that was. And then, there were the robes he wore. I may not know much about the slain theocracy, aside from the obvious facts, but I did know what the uniforms of some of their soldiers looked like after that encounter earlier today. And while the color was different, the design was too similar to be coincidence. This man was one of them. He wore a dark teal robe outlined in white, a short dark teal cape, and a belt filled with pouches and potion bottles. And all I could wonder through my tears was what the slain theocracy wanted with me. As I promised, you may play with girl until my mistress arrives. But the only rule I have is that she must be unspoiled. Oh, gods. I didn't want to be left in the hands of these monsters anymore. They had stripped me, toyed with me, and then tightly wrapped me up in a way that pulled on my shoulders, legs, and other places that felt unbearable. But there was nothing that I could do because of the paralysis that prevented me from trying to shift to a more comfortable position. And then there was the unbearable itching of my ears, head, and lower back that I could do nothing to relieve. I just want to go home. I want to be with Mom, Tyr, and my friends in someplace warm. I don't want to be in this dark cave amongst these monsters. Thank you, Master. We promise that the cute prey will not have a single piece of it broken when you need her next, Master. The Spider-Woman said before groping me, earning a barely audible cry of shock over my sobbing. Then, the Spider-Woman near my head leaned over me until her face was the only thing that I could look at. Oh, cute prey, why ever are you so sad? We'll get to have so much fun together, though I only wish that we were able to utilize you as an incubator or soften up your insides with acidic venom, she said with some disappointment as she caressed my cheek. Her touch instinctively made me want to recoil away, but I could only remain in place, trapped with my thumping heart and fear. Then, the Spider-Woman by my feet began prodding me in certain spots, making me want to scream. Stop touching me. I'll leave her in your care. The slain soldier said before walking off into the cave. No, don't leave me alone with them. I wanted to beg to him. Instead, I was left alone with nothing but malicious giggling. Now, cute prey, you're alone to our tender care. Sisters, we should make a comfortable bed for our cute prey. She only deserves the best, after all. The Spider-Woman carrying me proposed, earning nods from the other two as they skittered from my field of view. Then, I was rolled over in her hands until I was facing the earthen floor of the cave. Behind me, I hear more giggling along with various other noises that I couldn't identify, but sounded so loud in my itching ears. I barely had any time for a reprieve when something suddenly started hoisting me into the air by my feet and shoulders. My body was lifted from the grasp of the monster holding me, and I could smell the growing scent of the two other spider-women right above me. When I was about 15 feet off of the ground, the back of my body finally hit resistance and I felt horrible hands tighten something around my throat, waist, and ankles to hold me in place. A few moments later, the scent of the third Spider-Woman grew stronger as whatever I was attached to seemed to slightly bounce with any movement made by the monsters behind me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, the excitable spider monster skittered over to me while standing upside down until her spider legs and thorax straddled my waist while she leaned her human torso over me until our faces were inches apart. You know, with that little resilience you have, I wonder if your body has recovered from the venom enough to make louder noises? She asked in amusement as her thumb brushed over my web-covered lips. While she did that, my teeth felt like they were elongating and sharpening in my mouth. What was happening to me? I just love when my toys squeal. She then grabbed me, and much to her delight, I ended up squealing just how she wanted. And as this happened, I could feel movement coming back to my body from the slight twitches I could make. Oh, I was right. Gods, my head and ears are so unbearably itchy while something feels like it's trying to poke its way out of my tailbone. Everything feels too tight. Sister, look. The first Spider-Woman said, which sounded so loud, as she came into view while gazing to the top of my head. Our cute prey is changing just for us, it seems. Why does she sound so loud? What does she mean by changing? Saying this, the monster reached for the top of my head, towards what I thought was my hair. Then, she grabbed it and pulled. MMMMMMMMMMPH. I screamed through my gag, over the venom in my veins, as it felt like she had just grabbed a bundle of raw nerves and pulled on them. And she still hadn't let go of whatever it was. In fact, she only tightened her grip and elicited more screams of agony from me. This seems like so much fun. Our cute prey is singing such a sweet song. As the Spider-Woman straddling me excitedly cried, she reached up to the other side of my head and yanked. My vision went white at this point as I screamed at the agony and received only more giggling and excited words from the monsters before they finally stopped yanking whatever was on top of my head. I found myself sobbing after going through that torture. Sisters, I've always wanted to have a pet. Our cute prey seems like she wants to grant that wish by growing the cute features of one. The monster that once carried me said. Features? What features? Just let me go. I want to go home. If our cute prey is a pet, then I'd assume that, like any good puppy, she'd just love it if I did this. The excitable monster said before rubbing whatever she was holding. My body betrayed me as an extremely pleasurable sensation filled my body and a moan left my lips. Just stop it. Stop it. Stop it. My ears then rang with the sounds of heavy metal boots impacting the earth. It echoed throughout the cave, and the Spider-Women stopped their ministrations on me and backed away. When they did so, I was greeted to the figure of a woman encased in heavy plate armor striding towards where I hung in the air. The coloring of the armor was mainly dark purple, with a silver-colored breastplate, armor edging, and stylistic horns attached to the helmet. At least, I thought they might be stylistic. Along with that, she had large pauldrons made of a dark metal and similar colored lengths of cloth at both sides of her hips. The armor looked completely impregnable aside from the slits on the helmet that acted as a visor and revealed a pair of yellow dots glowing within. At her approach, I could just feel the power coming off of her, along with an immense malice aimed at me. Trailing besides her was the slain theocracy soldier who followed after this woman with a doting expression etched upon his face. As she got closer, my heart started hammering in my chest. I am pleased at your success, Gunter. The woman's cold and cruel voice echoed from within the helmet. Thank you, my mistress. I live to serve you, your majesty. The man groveled, making me wonder who this royal was if a soldier of the slain theocracy was obeying her. Gunter, have your summons bring the girl down to me. I'd like to examine her, she commanded, earning nods and bows from Gunter. Right away, your majesty, he said before looking up to me and the Spider-Women and gesturing, do as her majesty commands. I soon felt bouncing movement on, what I assumed to be a web at this point, as the Spider-Women moved to follow Gunter's order. I heard the snap of lines being cut before I was lowered down by my shoulders and feet until I hung at the armored woman's eye level. Due to the venom still within me, and despite my body's best attempts to clear it out of my system, I was unable to muster the strength to even raise my head up. Instead, my eyes could only see the woman's heeled boots. That didn't last for long as the woman tightly grasped the bottom of my jaw and roughly jerked my head up, earning my muffled grunt of surprise and pain from the act as she studied my face. How feeble and helpless you look right now, horse-spawn, she commented. I found myself trying to question. Oh, yes, girl, you are that horse-spawn. Though, I believed you were human from the last reports I received from my spies. My eyes definitely shot open when I heard that. What did she mean that she thought I was human? She was mistress of the master. Before our very eyes, the girl began changing. The excitable spider woman clarified, earning an ominous hum from the armored woman. Very interesting. That makes me wonder. She leaned over my shoulder and I felt her hand tear at the webbing near my lower back, allowing the cold air to hit my bare skin while also releasing a great pressure that had been growing by my tailbone. Seems that I was correct. Her armored hand then grabbed what felt like an extra limb, making me gasp in surprised worry before she gave a small yank to it. MMMMMMMPH. I screamed as it felt like another sensitive cluster of nerves was being pulled. This earned a cruel laugh from the woman as she stopped looking over my shoulder and met my gaze once more. The woman's hand slid from holding my jaw down to her fingers slowly wrapping around my neck, adding an increasing pressure that was starting to strangle me. Like whore mother, like whore daughter. I think that the first thing I might do, once that wormy appendage has finished growing, is flay it and wear the fur as a nice scarf. Then, I'll chop it off and send the rest back to your whore mother as a gift to remember you by, she threatened, while I still couldn't understand what she was talking about. Just as black dots began crowding my vision, her grip loosened, allowing me to breathe once again. Are you not aware of the changes happening to you, Forspawn? No, it appears not. To answer that dying question in your mind, you seem to be turning into a mongrel fox, just like her. I felt frozen upon hearing that. I was turning into a kitsune like Mom? How? And why was it even happening? Then, she put her finger to the chin of her helmet and made a tapping noise before laughing. Another, even better idea, just came to me. I could just rewrite your mind with control amnesia, so that you would turn into my docile little pet. I could even show your whore mother how much you've changed as you become unable to recognize her. She mused, filling me with immense fear. Then, like Mom, a small black portal opened next to her that she stuck her hand in before pulling out a red ring on her middle finger, designed with a green gem in the center. Actually, I think I'll try that now. I'll turn you into my good little fox that begs me for treats and attention. The armored woman decided as her grip on my throat tightened. I wanted to get away from her, to move. But all I could muster was twitches from my body and muffled cries of fear. She was going to take everything from me. I'd lose Tyre. I'd lose Mom. I'd lose all my friends. Tears streamed down my face at the thought of losing my entire identity and becoming nothing more than a willing slave. Don't worry, pet, this will only hurt for a moment. Then, you won't even remember. NNNNMMPH. I screamed as the green gem began to glow. Somebody, save me. Then, the armored woman stopped and the glow receded as her hand pulled away from my face and went to the side of her horned helmet where she stayed silent before giving out a groan of annoyance. I have urgent business to take care of in my theocracy. Gunter, ensure that the girl is still alive and usable for when I return to finish what I started. Other than this, you and your summons may use her in any way you see fit. After saying this, the armored woman released my throat and pulled out a scroll from a dark portal, opened it, and then disappeared. As Her Majesty said, you may continue to play with the girl, Gunter said with a wave of his hand. Even with the cruel woman's plan being delayed for slightly longer, that still didn't free me from the torment of the spider women as the lines holding me were quickly pulled up and I was tied to the web once more as the spider women giggled and surrounded me. The excitable spider woman gave that monstrous grin of hers. It appears that the rules have changed, cute prey. We only need to ensure that you are still alive and usable. Everything else is fair game. This made her burst into another giggling fit as she leaned over me with eyes full of sadistic glee. Mid-giggle, the excitable monster's head was consumed in a blaze of blue flame as she screamed in agony, attempting to put out the fire, before falling off of where she had been sitting to the ground. This allowed me to see a sight that made me cry in relief. MMMMPH. Mom. She was completely soaked in her white goddess outfit, and while she was standing instead of sleeping on a bed, I was able to see the difference in her hair length as it now reached her knees. Behind her, 10 tails snaked about and bristled their fur. And her expression, one of fury beyond imagining, made me feel completely safe. Sis ahhh. The Spider-Woman left to me had her head burst into blue flame, followed by the one on the right. As for Gunter, Mom slammed him to the ground with one of tails before pulling him towards her outstretched finger that made contact with his forehead. My eyes could see the shifting of mana encapsulate Gunter's head before he began screaming in agony. Then, a moment later, she stopped whatever spell she had cast and Gunter disappeared into a black portal before he had a chance to get a word in. Just as quickly as it opened, the portal closed after him, leaving Mom standing there looking at me. A moment later, Mom was floating in front of me and whatever was holding me aloft was quickly cut, allowing me to fall into her arms. "I've got you, kiddo," Mom said softly to me, all the fury gone and replaced by loving warmth. Earlier. Kasha. I stood impatiently in the rain, waiting to hear from my servants on whether they had finally caught one of the bastards involved in Nina's kidnapping. Each second that ticked by was another second that my Nina was possibly suffering. Another moment where I had to listen to her static-sounding cries in my mind. Another moment where my rage began boiling to the point of overflowing. Casting message to call Paemu, I quickly commanded, "Report. Have you captured one of the fuckers yet?" "No, not yet, Your Highness. The trail is growing warmer for me, but the storm does much to impede my tracking. I shall attempt to hasten my efforts," he answered back. After contacting Paemu, I ticked through all the other kitsune that I had sent searching for the accomplices. Each one gave me the same answer as Paemu, more or less. They still hadn't found the targets just yet. It took all my self-control to not just scream at the kitsune to hurry up. To tell them that they were failures. To vent at least some of my frustration onto another person. But I kept myself in check. My servants were doing the best they could in these conditions. They all knew how much Nina's kidnapping upset me. All of them loved me, and in turn, adored my daughters, so they were all just as angry as I was. To prevent myself from saying something I might regret, I ended the spell there and roared in rage while my tails smashed the ground around me. Anything to let out this growing rage. This absolute urge to kill all those responsible. I would have it, and I would save my Nina. Just a little bit longer. Mama's gonna be there soon. Stop touching me. Nina's voice screamed in my mind, making me pace back and forth as my patience became harder to keep a hold of. Just wait a little bit longer. Don't leave me alone with them. My paws were loudly stomping into the earth as each second drew on to be longer and longer. I can wait a few moments more as I heard Nina's screams in my mind once more. I had turned into my humanoid form as I ripped the hat and veil off my head, and tried letting the rain cool me down. Yet, it did little to alleviate my mind. Just stop it. Stop it. Stop it. I was already reaching into my inventory and pulling out Shooting Star. More moments of waiting before I tried, message, once more. Have you found them? Have you captured the bastards yet? I questioned as I heard Nina's screams once again. I had already swapped out a ring with Shooting Star. I deeply apologize for continuing to disappoint you. I haven't caught them yet, but I feel that I'm soon to capture them. This I swear to you, Your Highness. Paemu replied. I have no doubts about that. I consoled the kitsune before ending the spell. Just as I was about to contact the next kitsune, I couldn't wait anymore. Somebody, save me. Fuck this. I used up the second wish on my right as the massive spell array formed around me. My mind as it was analyzing the spell started coming up with many more potential ideas to create an alternate, wish upon a star, spell, but I didn't really care. I only had one thing on my mind. I wished to be at the same place as my Nina, I shouted above the sounds of the storm. I could have probably phrased a better wish. I could have even made an altogether better wish. But I didn't have the time or patience to think about it that hard. I only wanted to save my kit. being quickly surrounded by light, my location shifted to that of a cave lit up with a few lights. Looking around, my eyes instantly took in everything that I could see. To my left, a man who hadn't noticed my arrival wearing a dark robe. He's the one that summoned all the spiders in the first place and was leading the soon-suffering band of kidnappers. But he was the least of my concern. Up above the cave, in a massive spiderweb, were 3 driders that surrounded my kit who had been fastened to that web, still wrapped up in those webs. The driders were all laughing at my kit, giggling at what they might do to her. Without hesitation, I launched a bolt of foxfire at the drider leaning over my kit, completely engulfing her head in flame. That cut off her giggling as she was soon screaming in agony as she fell off the web and onto the ground. I could have killed her instantly, but I wanted her to suffer the pain of burning in foxfire. This gave me a clear sight of my kit, hope filling her completely golden eyes as she looked at me. Already, I could see the changes that she had started to undergo as a beautiful pair of brunette-furred fox ears was slowly growing out of her head, getting longer as I watched. MMMMPH. Mom. I could easily tell what she was shouting, even gagged as she was. But she wasn't safe just yet. My eyes shifted over to the next spider bitch who was looking at where her compatriot had been. Sis HHH. The spider woman left to my kit was about to speak when, with barely a thought, I sent another bolt of blue fire that ignited her head, followed by the final drider. I savored the screams of agony from both as they fell from their web screaming before I grabbed the man with my tail before he could react. Slamming him into the ground, I pulled him over to me and ripped whatever information I needed from his head. Once finished, I threw the man, who I now knew was named Gunter, into a portal to an empty cell at Haven Lake. I'd deal with him personally at a later time. My kit was more important than giving out a just punishment. Casting a mixture of fly and blink, I arrived right in front of Nina and used my tails to cut her down while I gently caught her into my arms and held my kit tightly to me as I allowed us to float back down to the ground. "I've got you, kiddo," I reassured her. Nina. We quickly floated down to the ground where Mom sat me down on the ground. My head slumped forwards due to the venom that made trying to move any part of my body an arduous task, even with this strong constitution I now had, which was quickly trying to clear it. Mom seemed to take notice of this as one of her tails quickly cast a spell on me, filling my body with a warmth that took away all my aches and pains, but more importantly, my paralysis. Instantly, my head shot up and I turned to look at Mom, who gently cupped my cheek with a smile. "Hold still," she said softly. After that, my body felt warm for an instant while I heard the loud noise of a fire bursting to life before dying down. I noticed 2 things instantly. The first was that I felt very cold, while the second was that my body no longer felt bound by webbing. Without a moment's hesitation, I jumped onto Mom and wrapped her into a hug before I began crying from everything that happened. In return, Mom held me tightly in her arms and tails. "You're safe now. Mama's got you, and I promise that no one will ever hurt you while I'm around, Celicia Nina." Hearing Mom say my full name for the first time made me cry all the harder. I was so scared, I sobbed out. "I know you were, kiddo. So was I," she admitted and stroked my hair. The woman said that she was going to turn me I into a P pet and M make me forget everyone W with magic. I choked out at how close I was to losing myself. "It's okay. That woman will never touch you while I still breathe," Mom reassured me, at least until I heard something that chilled me to the bone. "Let's fix that." The woman's voice spat out and Mom's tails quickly cocooned the pair of us. A moment later, our improvised shelter was smacked by something that caused us to fly into the air before the sound of cracking stone filled my ears and we impacted hard against the ground before skidding a few times. I could hear the rain again, and pulling from Mom's shoulder, I could see her face become a grimace. Or, is the mother fox trying to protect her baby? Something smacked us again, launching us into the air before another hit threw us hard to the earth. "You know, I had to delay something very important because of you tripping my wards." And that just pisses. Another hit launched us again, me. Another hit, off. I felt us crash into something, and looking at Mom's face, I could see she was in a lot of pain. Nina, Mom cast a spell on me, covering me in a hastily made green dress. I'm going to send you back to the others so that you'll be safe. But Mom, what about you? It looks like she's hurting you. Just come with me. I pleaded, hoping that she'd just join me. It terrified me that someone was able to hurt Mom, and it made me all the more certain that I didn't want her to be alone. Giving me a large grin, Mom tousled my hair. It's the parent's job to take care of the kid. Not the other way around, kiddo. I love you. Wait. I didn't even get the chance to talk further as I was now sitting on Mom's bed under the temple. Kasha. I felt completely relieved to know that Nina was now completely safe, even if slightly changed. But I planned to see both her and everyone else again very soon. I just needed to take care of this demon queen bitch beforehand. Unwrapping my tails from myself, I assessed the damage done to them. Multiple heavy cuts littered them, leaking my golden blood on the ground. Even if the wounds were already rapidly healing, it still told me that this woman was incredibly powerful, probably between levels 90 to 100. From all the information I ripped from Gunter, and I had a massive punishment in store for the little bastard later, the woman was apparently the secretive true leader of the slain theocracy for centuries. She had organized the plan to kidnap Nina so as to have a hostage against me when she attempted to take over the world. Not happening. I'm ending this bitch today. Then, I'm heading to the slain theocracy to take care of it next. Over the continual rain, my ears picked up the sound of her dropping down above me. Forming 8 of my tails into a shield over my head, I felt the biting impact of either a sword or an axe on my tails, making me grit my teeth as the attack slightly cut into my flesh. At the same time, the ground cratered beneath my feet while a shockwave of force knocked down the trees around us that hadn't already fallen from me being pinballed here. Planning on fighting back now, cunt? Where's your little horse spawn at? I'm just dying to make her my little pet. She taunted me, earning a growl of rage as my 2 free tails charged up a foxfire spear, before firing them at the woman, launching her off me from the concussive force, but seeming to do little damage to that armor she wore. Oh, I planned to fight back. I only held back because my daughter was with me and I didn't want her getting hurt. But now, nothing's holding me back from wiping your armored ass off the face of this realm. I countered while putting my hair up into its usual ponytail. Like that could happen, whore. I've studied you for a while now. I know how you tick. So, I'll give you the chance to surrender now. Do so, and I'll even allow your brat to remember who you are after I've put a collar on her. The thought of this bitch touching my kid any more than she already had absolutely infuriated me. Fuck you, I shouted back while firing off 10 greater fireballs from my tails at this demon queen. She didn't move from her spot, making me narrow my eyes for anything. I was right on this assumption as, with a swing of the flat of her axe, all the projectiles were sent flying right back at me. Casting, blink, to appear 20 feet left, I didn't expect for her to have a bead on me and immediately begin dashing towards me with her axe readied. I blinked again 30 feet behind her as the fireballs went off, engulfing a large swath of trees. The demon queen immediately halted her charge and turned on a dime to charge at me once again. It gave me mere moments to analyze my opponent. She's immensely strong and fast despite her heavy armor. Her armor can tank hits from my 4th tier spells, and likely lower, without much damage, despite my magic penetration 2 passive. Projectile attacks won't work on her since she can parry them back to me. I know she has to use the skill consciously, otherwise my foxfire spears wouldn't have hit her, middling damage regardless. RS, beams, and other non-projectile-based attacks are my only option unless she's otherwise occupied. All in all, she's a high-speed melee fighter with tanking abilities and heavy physical damage. If I am unable to block one of her direct hits with my tails, I'm either getting heavily injured or killed by her. Fuck, she's an annoying matchup. I blinked above her by 30 feet when she stopped, quickly located me, and pounced from the ground in a single bound, all in the span of 1 second, even faster than before. Fuck. Unable to blink in time, I shielded my body with my tails as the demon queen slammed my tails with her axe. Then, the pressure disappeared and my ears picked up the change of noise above me. Not even taking the time to look, I covered my head with 5 of my tails, feeling the bite of her axe in my tails before rocketing to the ground in a crater, my remaining tails cushioning my impact. I grinned. Funny thing about momentum. It really sucks when you're in the air without anything to kill the movement. Without a second to waste, I cast Ray of Foxfire, sending a glowing blue beam that impacted her in the chestplate, sending her veering off course and cratering the area 10 feet next to me. Without a moment to spare, and her eyes not on me, I cast Replicant, followed by Blink. Arriving behind the trees that were still standing, I started buffing myself while studying the Demon Queen and my copy. Just as I would do, my copy blinked out of the crater as the Demon Queen literally charged through the earth between the crater I had landed in and hers before bursting out on the other side with her axe swinging down on where I had once been. Instantly, my copy dropped, Foxfire Annihilation, into the crater before the bitch could react, earning a scream of annoyance before her axe flew out of the crater of fire at my copy, who easily deflected it with her tail. What neither she, nor I, expected was for the Demon Queen to have swapped places with her axe using a transposition skill before swiftly landing a haymaker on my copy's face. That cancelled her spell as she was sent flying 30 feet away, skipping across the ground until her tails finally anchored her to the earth. She had a massive bruise on her cheek with a few cuts on her cheekbone that bled gold. A moment later, I watched her spit gold blood and a few molars to the ground. Afterwards, she wiped any remaining traces of blood away from her mouth with her sleeve. "Aren't you just an interesting bag of tricks?" my copy remarked as the Demon Queen cracked her knuckles. "I have more than enough tricks to break you. You know, if I'm feeling merciful, I might just turn you into my pet, like I will your horse spawn. That way, a mother and daughter won't have to be separated from each other, even if you're unable to remember who the other is. Oh, I'll even grab your older daughter as well." She then proceeded to laugh, causing both my copy and I to glare at her. I'll have the full familial set of bitches at my beck and call, all together with each other. Aren't I just generous? My copy growled in my place as I had to remain silent. "Bitch, mention another word about my daughters again and I'll cunt punch you so hard that your crotch plate's going to become your new IUD. My copy voiced for me. "I don't even know what that is, whore," the Demon Queen said with amusement. "Don't worry, you'll find out," my copy promised with a smirk before she cast Earth Fangs, level with the bitch's crotch. She barely was able to jump before the attack shot her in the air and my copy set upon her with 3 casts of Ray of Foxfire, initially impacting her right shoulder, chestplate, and left leg. Transposition. She shouted and swapped places with a nearby rock, instantly rushing at my copy with another punch readied. I took quick notice of the fact that the spots my copy's spells had hit were glowing red with some denting. My copy blocked the Demon Queen's first punch with a tail, earning a heavy hit that created a loud crack in the air from breaking the sound barrier. Another swing at her face, blocked with another loud crack. Finally, faster than my copy could react, the Demon Queen kicked a knee into my copy's stomach, winding her and making her cough up blood until it was followed up by another punch at her face. With a resounding crack as a tail quickly shifted in to take the hit, but regardless of the damage being prevented, my copy was still thrown off her feet and through the air, sliding against the ground until she pushed herself back onto her feet. Her dress was in tatters at this point, barely covering her modesty, while any parts that remained that were once white were now stained brown with mud or gold with blood. Spitting out another glob of gold blood, my copy looked at the Demon Queen warily. "Is this really all you have to offer me? Where is that vampire slayer that killed said vampire without a scratch? What kind of goddess is able to be defeated by mortal hands? You're a weakling and a fraud," the Demon Queen said as she calmly walked to my copy without an ounce of worry. And how did you know about me killing a vampire? Because it was I who had her bewitched with a world item. I watched your fight while planning and waiting. Killing you or enslaving you aids my plans. But before that, I'm going to break you. That earned a chuckle from my copy. I've had a bit of a suspicion about you. You're a player, aren't you? Wouldn't you just love to know? The bitch replied and dashed up to my copy in an inhuman burst of speed. But my copy already expected this and blinked away and launched a prepared beam of foxfire at the Demon Queen's back before she could pivot, launching her across the battlefield and knocking down a few trees in the process. The problem in dealing with this bitch by using powerful AOS against her was due to that transposition skill of hers. She could just switch the caster's position with hers. But that was an issue my copy planned to deal with quickly. With the brief respite of a few seconds, my copy cast Law of Planar Movement. No more of that teleportation switching bullshit. An instant later, a fallen tree burst from the section of the forest the bitch had crashed like a javelin, aimed directly at my copy. She responded by launching a fireball at the improved weapon. As the attack landed, blowing up the tree into flaming pieces of wood, two beings shot out of the forest together. One of them was the bitch who shot off towards the crater with her axe still inside, the other was a bicorn. It was a dark horse with a purple mane and tail, crimson eyes, and dark armor across its body. On the monster's head, giving it its titular name, was a pair of silver horns that were currently aimed to impale my copy in a charge. Her hearing and sense of smell quickly picked up on the incoming threat and, without hesitation, she cast Foxfire Annihilation on the monster. The bicorn quickly jumped over most of the attack, but its legs took the brunt of the hit, heavily burning them to begin revealing bone. The bicorn whined in pain as two of my copy's tails cast Incineration Bomb, impacting, one after the other, on the demonic horse as orbs that rapidly expanded into a pair of suns. This had the added effect of temporarily making it appear as if it was daytime for a brief moment amidst the storm. That was when the Demon Queen rushed at my copy with her axe in full swing. Slightly prepared for such an attack, my copy blocked the strike with four of her tails and quickly wrapped those tails around the axe to have a grip on them. Two more of her tails anchored her into the ground to prevent her from flying, and four others rapidly stabbed at the Demon Queen's armor. Where her tails hit, sparks erupted, but she wasn't finished with her retaliation. A greater fireball was cast from her hands, point blank. Parry this, you cunt. An explosion of fire consumed the pair as the shockwave from it quickly launched the two to opposite ends of the battlefield. Much to mine, and the copy's pleasure, the Demon Queen lost her grip on her axe while my copy held it. Without hesitation, and mid-flight, she stored it away into our inventory, removing the weapon from the battle. Then, she crashed into the ground, her tails cushioning the landing. From what I could see, even without our magic-resisting passive, the combined effect of our World Disaster class combined with it being a point-blank hit, had covered her in slowly healing burns, while the clothes she wore had been mostly annihilated in the blast. All of that damage to yourself, and for what? My Bardiche? I don't need it to tear you apart. I'll ensure that you'll hand it back to me while begging for mercy, poor. The Demon Queen spat out as she stood up. I was happy to note that her armor had heavy scorching and some slight signs of melting, mostly at the chest plate. My copy pushed herself to her feet with a grin. The fact that me taking your toy is pissing you off certainly makes me happy. I'd say that's worth it. That was followed with a laugh, earning a growl from the bitch as she charged. This time, my copy attempted something different. She fired off 5 foxfire javelins from her tails at the bitch, yet instead of reflecting them back, the Demon Queen actually dodged each one instead of parrying them back at my copy. Her parrying skill requires a weapon. Good to know. But as my copy continued barely avoiding the Demon Queen speed blitzing her, I decided that I wanted to try something I haven't done in about a month. It had the risk of likely backfiring, but it was acceptable when going against another player that really wanted to kill me, or if not that, then break me to pieces. Casting Silence on my location, followed by setting up an illusionary image of the section of forest I was at. I used my skill, Loki's Call, to hopefully bring in another ally to this fight. Beneath my feet, a green runic circle grew and the winds of the rainstorm quickly picked up while a green pillar that was 6 feet high grew in front of me. Whatever light that still existed in the area was soon sucked into that pillar as my ally was on the verge of being summoned. Please be Loki or hell. Loki or hell. Loki or fuck. I then watched the pillar shrink before my eyes until it was only 2 feet high. Then, it burst into fragments of mana, releasing all the trapped light to reveal a foot-tall, red-furred squirrel with ears that stuck up from his head by 4 inches. He had a long and bushy tail that was almost 3 feet long with what seemed to be tiny white roots entwined in its fur. By all means, Ratatoskra looked like a mostly normal, if slightly larger, squirrel. Then, his beady green eyes traced themselves up and down my body with, what felt like, a lecherous look. Following that, he slicked his ears back, resulting in them just springing back up again. Hello, sugar tits. I knew that your shapely foxy ass couldn't resist summoning my handsome self. Come to Toski. He greeted before scampering over to me, faster than I could blink or react, climbed up my boot, then dress, then he crawled up through my cleavage until his head popped out on top. Ratatoskra, I wasn't exactly hoping to summon you since I needed a heavy hitter. And get out of my cleavage, I said with exasperation as I replayed all the other times I ended up summoning this squirrel. Usually, he'd only really be good for support. And by support, he'd only taunt enemies, aggroing them onto his furry ass. His Yggdrasil game incarnation was fairly lackluster, especially since, while not having an actual health bar, he had a hit count. After taking 9 hits, he'd blow a raspberry at the enemy and then leave. Perhaps the real version of Ratatoskra would be better? Fuck, I hope so. Sorry, sugar tits, but no can do. You summoned me out in a cold rainstorm and your bountiful jugs are warm and comfortable. Besides, you summoned me for a reason, and if you want my amazing services, I'm gonna need a little payment. He then taunted me by further wiggling into me and giving a buck-toothed grin. I simply glared at the rodent, before my eyes focused on the battle of my copy and the demon queen once more. What I found interesting was that, even with her axe taken away, she had started improvising with ripping off tree branches to parry attacks back at my copy. Each branch would instantly break upon reflecting the attack, but since there were more than enough branches around us, she had an infinite number of weapons to use. All I could say for certain is that she had a good strategy to fight me with. Well, if she had been fighting me, that is. Utilizing her speed to stick close to my copy, the demon queen barely gave any moment's reprieve for my copy. Her natural durability also helped her ignore any hits that my copy was able to get in, even if her armor was being slightly damaged from the attacks. And then, there's her immense strength to keep in mind. Any hits she gave were absolutely brutal to take. What didn't help matters is that the demon queen was getting scarily good at predicting when my copy would blink, too. I've no doubt that my copy is going to be absolutely pissed at me for acting as the test dummy in this fight. She took the hits for me, allowing me to see the measure the demon queen's strength, speed, and abilities. At the same time, it got this bitch to waste all of her time and effort on what she assumed was the real Kasha. Looking back down to the rodent, I asked, exactly what can you do to even help me in this fight? I'm completely positive that there's not much you can do to piss her off and grab her attention. I doubt that your taunting ability would even work on her since she's likely too powerful to be affected. I asked the rodent, earning a scandalous look from him. I'll have you know, sugar tits, that the weak, but no less handsome, version of me from that little game you played was an insult to your handsome Toski. The squirrel claimed, not exactly convincing me of his use. All I'm seeing is a perverted rodent trying to justify why he's still buried in my tits. I countered. I am a pure-born god of Old Yigi. Old One-Eye wishes he had as much knowledge of the realms that I do. I am the caretaker of Yigi, warden of the Vorm, greatest insulter of the realms, and many more titles. And yet, Loki's skill is still able to work on you. I countered. This only earned a roll of Ratatosk's green eyes. The green jester had to beg me himself to allow his skill to work on me. And I only accepted because it meant that I would have the high chance of being summoned by one of the hottest pieces of ass in the 9, well guess it's now 10, realms. Now, ya wanna keep asking questions or do ya wanna turn your marvelous tits over to the armored bitch, sugar tits? I gave the rodent a dry look, but I did what he said. Looking back, my copy was currently blocking a rapid flurry of punches from the Demon Queen. While they weren't hurting her tails like the axe had, that didn't mean that the blows didn't have immense power behind them. Every hit echoed with a crack and shockwave that would push the falling rain away from hitting the pair for a moment. The bitch was really going for blood now as her hits were becoming harder to track as she ramped up her speed. I doubt she could go any faster without her body beginning to break down on her. Even from where Ratatosk and I stood, I could hear heavy breathing coming from her helmet. I'll say one thing, the bitch's armor is only a little below prismatic tier in quality. Wonder who the maker is? The rodent commented, making me interested. Pulling out the woman's bardiche, as she called it, from my inventory, I held it before the rodent. And what about this item? I asked. Ratatosk gazed at the item inquisitively before pulling a paw out of my cleavage and feeling the surface of the weapon. Very nice. Divine tier as well. Ooh, and it seems that it's been edged in prismatic ore. Extremely pricey and rare. Know a few dwarves that would love to get their hands on this. As the rodent said this, I stored the weapon back and considered what that meant. She was a very well-equipped player. Enough to have an entire suit of divine tier armor along with an axe of the same tier edged in prismatic ore. The Demon Queen would have had to be a top-tier solo player like I was, or she had been part of a guild. But, aside from her strength, it certainly did explain why blows from that axe had actually hurt my tails. It was a slight tier higher in power than my tail's durability. While the information is nice, that isn't really enough to justify you hitching a ride from me, I said, reaching to pick the rodent out of my cleavage. Hold up, sugar tits. You didn't think that's all your handsome Toski planned to give your sexy ass? Saying this, Ratatosk glowed white, and then my body was highlighted in that same white glow before a white marking of a tree brightly glowed on my chest, Ratatosk's tree blessing. It was certainly a noticeable blessing as my body felt lighter, stronger, and faster. Energy surged in my body, just waiting to be let loose as the weight of something incomprehensibly ancient and massive focused its attention on me. What is this? I asked. Yiki and I are pretty close. She just loves her handsome Toski. As such, she allows me to loan out her power every once in a while. So, you got a few minutes to go wild. I think that earns me time in my very comfortable spot. I wanted to growl at him and tell the rodent no, but he was right. Fine. But no funny business. I warned with a glowing glare of my eyes. Wouldn't dream of it, sugar tits. He replied while snuggling into his spot. Can't kill him now. We'll kill him later. Need him now. Kill him later. I said as a mantra in my mind as I focused back on my copy. Thankfully, she was able to see through the illusion I put up and gave me a wink before allowing one of the Demon Queen's fists to break through her guard and land a punch in her abdomen. Keeling over and coughing blood, she received a punch to her face that slammed her into the ground, cratering it. She gave a scream of pain before receiving a kick to the stomach, making her curl up as the wind was kicked out of her. Pathetic. Is this truly what I was worried about? A big-titted fox whore that can't take a hit? This was followed by a stomp to her stomach, causing Copy to vomit out blood before the Demon Queen picked her up by the throat. My copy weakly struggled against the grip as the Demon Queen laughed. Come on. There has to be something more than that. Where's your big plan? How was it that you ever defeated anyone without help? By spreading you legs for anyone to aid you? She slapped my copy's face with each question, letting out the sound akin to a whip with each smack. Since this is everything that you are seemingly capable of, I'll let you know that your daughters will get a first-hand experience of torture after I finish breaking you. I'll use control amnesia, on you and change you into my pet. Then, I'll have you be the one to break your daughters before I change them as well. Item destruction. Upon saying the name of her skill, any scraps of clothing, along with all of my copy's rings, broke. All except the copy of the seed of Yggdrasil around her neck, leaving her as naked as the day I was born. Yet, despite the threats, torture, and humiliation, my copy simply laughed before her grip tightened on the Demon Queen's wrist. This made the bitch cock her head in confusion. "Why are you laughing?" she asked while looking around for any threats. I had already begun charging up Grand Catastrophe, since, as a player, I couldn't leave anything to chance with her. No prisoners, she dies. I did warn you about mentioning my daughters again. My copy's tails quickly snapped out and wrapped around all the Demon Queen's armored limbs while also anchoring the pair to the ground. This made the bitch tighten her grip around my copy's throat, attempting to crush her windpipe or snap her neck. Then, I finally fired off my spell, trying to aim downwards to mitigate collateral damage, even if I knew that it would be map-altering regardless, and then my vision before me turned white from the spell. As the spell's power eventually faded, I realized that my mana had only dipped to 3/4 THS after all of that. Guess this blessing of the rodent was useful after all. And yet, I did not enjoy looking at the collateral damage from my spell that left a massive fissure in the ground that stretched through the forest and towards the mountains. But my eyes soon widened as I realized that my attack had not been enough as, flying above the fissure, on a pair of black feathered wings, was the Demon Queen. I watched as the dark armor covering her had shattered, with the pieces of metal falling away into the abyss of the fissure to reveal a pitch-black suit of material underneath. But my eyes were glued to the bitch's face, her helmet cracked and shattered, falling to pieces bit by bit, releasing a curtain of raven hair that fell to her back. Then, a piece by her right eye, falling away to reveal a yellow slitted orb gazing at me with utter hate while pale skin surrounded it. A part of the helmet's decorative horn fell away, revealing a smooth white horn underneath. More and more of the helmet broke off, and with each new piece, my mind was able to recognize this bitch, and exactly where I had seen her before. "Albedo," I said, dropping the illusion that had been hiding Ratatoskra and I. At first, my mind was filled with shock at my recognition of this demon. That shifted to confusion as to why she went after my daughter and was attacking me when Momonga had said he'd taken care of it. Then, I became angry. "Albedo," I seethed. "Whore," she returned. "At least we can cease with the charade now. You'll fully know who it was that conquered and broke you." That only earned a glare from me. Momo said that he had dealt with this shit. "Why the fuck are you here?" This caused the crazed succubus face to twist into a snarl. "Don't you dare refer to my love like that. You are nothing more than a worm at his feet," she screamed at me in pure rage. "But that still doesn't tell me why you're here, succubitch, after Momo told you all to leave me and my family alone?" I calmly shot back, making certain to piss her off as I did so. "You have been poisoning my love's mind for too long. Even now, he can't see how dangerous you truly are to him. That you would give my love commands, and he would obey, tells me that you are the whore that will lead to his downfall. I tried to use a subtle approach of controlling you through your daughter, while freeing Nazarick of blame, but you had to ruin it," Albedo replied, making me slightly confused. "Are you fucking serious? What Momo and I had was called a platonic friendship, you crazy yandere bitch. And why the fuck would I ever not rescue my daughter when she was taken?" I screamed back at her. "To be honest, sugar tits, this crazy bitch has more screws loose than half the gods in the 10 realms." Ratatoskra piped up. This drew Albedo's ire and gaze towards the rodent. "And what might you be? Another one of the whore's rats skulking about?" Albedo questioned. Ratatoskra crossed his arms and leaned back into my chest. "I am Ratatoskra, caretaker of Yggdrasil, warden of the Vorm, resider of divine cleavage among many other titles. I'm too old to be called a mere rat by a petulant succubus throwing a tantrum. Not to worry, whore and rat, you're not going to be much of anything by the time I'm done." That was when she reached into her inventory and pulled out another massive bardiche of black metal. Yet this one felt different, more powerful. Well, shit. The bitch has one of Iggy's realms in her hands. When the squirrel said this, I felt slightly worried at what I thought he meant. What? The same thing you've got around your pretty neck, sugar tits. By the way, we'll probably have to talk about that sometime later. He answered, making me narrow my eyes at the confirmed world item in Albedo's hands. The fight has now changed. World items being brought into the mix meant that things would get a lot more dangerous and destructive. I didn't have much time to think as Albedo flew at me with a flap of her wings. At least, I thought I didn't until it came to my attention that she seemed slower than before for a pair of reasons. Her flight speed is not as fast as her land speed, and the buff I had from Ratatoskra was making everything seem a bit slower, or it was just making me faster. Quick downside to Albedo having a weapon again, aside from being extremely deadly, is that she can now parry my projectiles without consequence. She, at least, can't do that teleporting bullshit anymore. But I can still do mine. Casting Blink, so that I was floating under the bitch, I threw out Foxfire Annihilation, and watched the roaring blue inferno rise up to greet the succubus. Transposition. She announced her skill, and when nothing happened, she immediately switched to the defensive and shielded herself with her world item. That helped to tank a lot of the damage in addition to her second layer of armor and her own natural tankiness. Any information on the bitch's world item? I asked while blinking away to a patch of standing trees behind Albedo. Ginnungagop was formed from a realm that embodied chaotic destruction. As such, you'll want to avoid having anything you care about be in its general hitting range. Thankfully, we're both immune to most of the destructive effects due to your world items and my connection to Iggy. Ratatoskra answered quickly. A second later, Albedo dropped on my position with her world item glowing green with power. My eyes widened and I blinked 30 feet in the air as her world item made contact with where I'd been standing before. In a wave of green which grew out into an entire sphere of green that even enveloped the rodent and I. When it dispersed, the entire area was just gone. No rubble, no dirt, no dust. It just didn't exist anymore. For the first time seeing a world item be used in combat instead of as an after effect, that was terrifying to think what could have happened were anyone to be nearby. Wow, just imagine if the crazy lady was using the more destructive form of Ginnungagop. That was a very worrying thing to consider. I'd like to avoid finding out what that looks like. I muttered as I fired, Ray of Foxfire, from 9 of my tails while leaving my 10th tail and hands free to cast. As the rays soared towards Albedo, she ran while pulling a potion from her inventory and drinking it. Her speed increased after she was covered in a blue aura that faded. The increase in speed allowed her to easily outrun the beams before she jumped and was flying towards me. I was ready for anything as she flew towards me while reaching into her inventory. But then, she finally pulled out what she was looking for. Wait. Is that a whistle? Ratatoskra voiced the question for me as the bitch put the gold object to her lips and blew. I was ready for the thing to summon demons or monsters of some kind. What I wasn't expecting was for a painful high-pitched whine to fill my ears. I screamed in pain as my hands instantly went to clasp my ears to drown out the painful sound. It was almost so distracting that I almost didn't block Albedo's swing in time. 7 of my tails went to take the hit, yet all of them were filled with immense pain as the bardiche dug into them further than Albedo's original weapon. Blood dripped from my tails, followed by another trill whistle by Albedo that made me scream as my eardrums felt like someone was stabbing ice picks into them. Willing myself through the pain, I cast Blink, and arrived 50 feet away into the fissure, letting myself fall into the abyss as I got away from the noise. Feeling a warm wetness from my ears, I pulled one of my hands away to find it covered in golden blood. Okay, she's been prepping for a fight against me for a while. I needed to figure out something fast before she was on my ass again. And judging by the increasing whine that was growing in my ears again, I'd have less than 6 seconds. Nicholas Flamel, eat your heart out. Kasha. 6 seconds. Need to deal with the crippling noise quickly as succubitch is diving at my ass fast. Need to buy time and a distraction in addition to this. That means I'll need to do all of this nearly simultaneously, not that said action is difficult. 1 second passes. I've conjured a pair of heavy earplugs to block out the worst of the noise, muffling the world down to a less than mundane human level of noise compared to what I'm used to. It is slightly offsetting to me, but I can quickly adjust. 2 seconds pass. I throw up multiple illusionary walls made real in front of myself and the bitch, obscuring her vision of me. The loud crashes made against them already says that she's punching through them and will be upon me soon. 3 seconds pass. I cast Replicant once again and my copy joins me in freefall, already aware of the plan in place. At the same time, 3 illusionary copies of me are quickly conjured and begin flying into random directions, with me taking a 4th direction flying away from the cover of the illusionary walls. 4 seconds pass. I, and all my illusionary copies, look back at the same time to see Albedo having smashed through most of the barriers. Barely hesitating at the scattering of my copies and I as she believes she knows the secret of the obfuscation, that I'm still hiding behind the barriers with a spell at the ready. My replicant copy has prepared Maximize Magic, Shining Burst, and is about to unleash it. I don't typically utilize the Maximize Magic, Metamagic Enhancement, namely because of the normal penetration and power of my spells due to my classes, but this was one of those times for it to be of use. With the Shining Burst spell, it was an O spell that hurt multiple targets depending on their karma values or if they were undead. The higher a karma value was, the less damage the spell would do until it was completely useless at a karma value of 0. Luckily for me, I knew that this spell was very useful against my opponent for 4 reasons. The first reason is that Albedo is a succubus, a race that is mostly made up of beings with a high negative karma score. The next reason is that the Guild of Ain's Ulgaun consisted of players that heavily role-played as villains, making it so any NPCs they made were going to have low karma scores to begin with. The third reason is that, as an O spell, she's not going to be able to parry it. And the final reason? She's an absolutely crazy bitch that definitely has a -500 karma score just from her actions alone. No matter what, this was definitely going to hurt her tankiness regardless. 5 seconds pass. My illusionary copies and I, after flying more than 30 feet from Albedo and my replicant copy, all turn together and cast Maximize Magic, Ray of Foxfire. Even if my illusions were made real, the spells they cast were more watered-down versions of mine. But it was still going to deal damage due to my World Disaster class. At this time, Albedo has broken through the last illusionary wall and was swinging her world item at my copy's head. Finally, 6 seconds pass. My copy cast the spell and a bright light encompasses the area in holy energy. My spell fires off, quickly impacting against Albedo's second layer of armor. Only my ray, compared to the illusionary copies, causes the bitch's armor to heat up red on impact from the heat. As for Albedo, 2 things happen at once. The first thing to occur is for Ginum Gogop to bite through my copy's left shoulder and cut into where her heart is. That earns a spray of her blood and a scream of pain. At the same time, the Maximize Magic, Shining Burst, slams into Albedo like an adamantine wall as she immediately screams in pain and rage as her body suffers the damage of the holy attack and parts of the skin on her face burn. As the light clears, I can see my copy burst apart into gold motes of mana that fall further into the abyss below. Albedo, in comparison, is literally steaming mad with all the steam that floats off her armor from the initial attack alongside the raindrops falling upon her that literally evaporate on contact with her body. Her hateful yellow eyes are fully fixed on me, being able to discern that I was the real Kasha from the heat that my attack produced compared to my illusionary copies. Clever whore, aren't you? She growled with gritted teeth which I could barely hear over my earplugs and the rain. I'll take it as a compliment, suck you bitch. I taunted back. As I, and my illusionary copies, were about to fire off another set of spells, the bardiche in her hands transformed into a silver twisting scepter with a floating silver orb on top of it. Looks like the crazy bitch has swapped to Ginnungagop's more destructive form. Ratatos said as a massive sphere of green swiftly encased myself, my copies, and the wall of the fissure in a moment. Upon fading away, the damage was clear to be seen as a massive spherical chunk of the fissure, at a radius of 100 feet, had been deleted along with my copies that weren't under the protection of a world item like I was. Albedo was rocketing towards me, her world item shifted back to a bardiche, as I caught my bearings. The whistle was in her mouth again, letting out its loud trill, but my earplugs were doing their job to block out most of the noise, though I could feel a headache quickly building up from the noise that could get through. Reacting quickly, I conjured up another wall, and used blink to appear 50 feet above the bitch. She didn't even bother with the wall as her bardiche glowed green and another sphere enveloped the area, erasing the conjured wall. Keeping track of everything I've been watching, a few observations came to mind. Albedo is hasty in using her world item compared to other players I've faced who would have saved the item as a trump card. She isn't used to PvP combat, but she is strategized around beating me. I'm pissed about the bitch, and I fucking hate her, but I'm letting that allow her to dictate the fight. I need to work around what I know about her. She is utilizing biological weaknesses against me in addition to skills and items. Considering my body, I have two main weaknesses, aside from my weakness to physical attacks, and that's my enhanced hearing and sense of smell. With barely a thought, I conjured a pair of nose plugs that blocked out another one of my main senses. I had no doubt that she likely had another thing in store for me, similar to that whistle. Next, I have to consider how she has a lot of magic defenses to try and counter me. The magic defenses are something that I can lightly easily shred through, but that armor of hers is an entirely different story. Originally, the first layer of it that I had broken off performed an excellent job at blocking attacks. And then there was the sacrificial defensive aspect to it. A full-on hit from the attack, armor or not, of Grand Catastrophe, would have done critical damage to her body. Instead, a layer of the armor broke off, leaving her perfectly healthy afterwards. I could only assume that the armor was able to take any singular source of extreme damage meant for its wearer whenever Albedo decided to do so. Else, that armor would have cracked again after the last hit she took. I only had two options, aside from just trying to kill the bitch. I needed to either drop another heavy attack that would force her to sacrifice that secondary layer of armor, or I needed to break the armor down from multiple attacks. That shouldn't be as hard to do as it was for her first layer of armor, since it was easy to witness how my ray of foxfire caused the material to become superheated. There was the option of using Grand Catastrophe again, but it would come at the risk of being too predictable if done too often. Additionally, I was already creating so much collateral damage from the first casting of that spell. I was really only able to pray that no innocent people had been caught in the crossfire, even if it had been aimed at the forest. But that also left out the permanent scarring of the land that I was creating. If I was to use that spell again, I need to, preferably, be directly below Albedo to shoot it into the sky or directly above her to create a simple hole. Before Albedo could turn her gaze upwards after discovering that I was missing and looking around for me, I blinked 40 feet behind her, leaving an illusionary copy in place. Predictably, Albedo charged at the illusion until she got within 20 feet of it, then Ginnungagop activated once again in a sphere of green light. The bitch was getting paranoid about if my copies were actually me and was now testing it with the world item to ensure it. This brought a thought about the world item that was constantly being utilized. With Ginnungagop, it had a no-destruction effect that could be triggered at will while in bardiche form, since she hadn't needed to hit my copy to activate that ability. It was a powerful effect, but concentrated at a range of 30 feet. In the staff form, it went to 100. Regardless of form change, the green sphere would last for 3 to 4 seconds. During that time, anyone caught within the attack, user included, would be completely blind from the effect. On top of that, the fact that she didn't constantly keep activating it meant that there was likely a cooldown to reactivate. Possibly 10 to 15 seconds or so. This sphere would destroy anything, illusionary copies included, but not my replicant copy, since it seems she copied the protection effect of my world item that I wore, even if she couldn't actually use it. Speaking of items, I had no urge to test and see if that item-breaking skill of hers would be able to work on any of my divine items. I had no method of replacing them if that was the case, and any item I had to protect from such an effect was in my sanctuary back in E-Rantle. So, I'm stuck wearing these conjured clothes. Succubitch was a matchup that I was not prepared for, but I can improvise with what I have right now. She has a single-minded fixation on hurting me, while also expecting to tank through anything that I might be able to do to her. I am causing her to second-guess whether she's attacking me or another copy. The immediate use of Ginnungagop just proved it. That had me consider another option. Lull her into false expectations. Quickly, I conjured another illusionary copy and waited as the green sphere died away. You're such a cowardly little whore. Hiding behind all these illusions and tricks because you know that I will kill you, Albedo shouted as her eyes landed on my illusion and I. The whistle now hung around her neck on a chain. Considering that you're a succubus who tried to sneakily kidnap my daughter and use her against me, all the while hiding behind a false persona? That seems a little more apt for yourself. Wouldn't you agree, you cowardly succubitch? I obviously taunted back as my illusion copied my voice and movements. Albedo growled at me as her glowing yellow eyes glowered at me in rage and hate. I'll enjoy ripping that tongue of yours out, she shouted before pulling out a pair of potions and quickly chugging on them. After a quick flashing outline of red and green on her body, the bitch hurtled towards me at rapid speeds. In turn, I sent my copy at her. Albedo barely paid any focus to the copy, her eyes firmly on me as she correctly predicted for me to be the original. To avoid even having to deal with my illusion, she activated Ginnungagop once again and the green sphere returned. That was when I blinked 40 feet above her and cast Replicant again. The sphere cleared away and Albedo looked around until she saw me again. My copy gave a cheeky wave to the succubus. What was that about ripping my tongue out? She taunted. I floated a little in front of my copy as she created 3 more illusionary clones. I doubt you're ever going to be able to back up that promise of yours, especially when outnumbered. That was when I and the illusions flew at Albedo with spells at the ready. But where my copies had fake spells prepared in hand and on their tails, I had the real versions of them. Upon getting within Ginnungagop's range, the bitch activated it as she tried to clear the clones. As soon as the sphere came into being, I cast Blink to appear directly below her and my copy. Since the bitch saw that all of my illusions, along with myself, had disappeared in the attack, it left my singular copy readying her spell in hand at Albedo's approach. That was when I cast Grand Catastrophe directly in the air. Albedo had a single moment to notice the white light and look down before she and my copy were consumed in the attack. It was after the attack cleared that the rain stopped falling on me and beams of sunlight streamed down from the sky through the hole in the storm clouds. Hundreds of feet away, I could see the rain still falling as only this battlefield was devoid of the droplets. But my eyes went to focus on the approaching succubus as another layer of her armor had been shed off. What remained now was an almost silver mercurial material that shifted across her body with shards of her broken armor layers mixed into it. Once again, her speed had slowed, even with the potions she drank boosting it. Your tricks are getting old, she shouted before pulling out 2 orbs with a yellow gas roiling within. Suffer. With her fingers, she cracked one of the orbs open, releasing a gaseous bomb that, even with the nose plugs, some of the horrific stench still managed to seep in. It was fucking foul. If I hadn't thought ahead, I likely would have been incapacitated for a bit. Casting Foxfire Annihilation, I watched her intelligently utilize her world item to erase all the approaching flames. Ending the spell, I blinked away with a smug realization that she was gassing out. Earlier, when she had caught me off guard in an emotional state, she had her best chance of potentially killing me. But now, after utilizing her hidden tricks while consuming or sacrificing her few resources to protect herself, she was getting put at a steadily increasing disadvantage. She only had, what I guessed, was a single layer of armor left to block a deadly hit, then she was easy pickings. With 8 of my tails, I cast Ray of Foxfire, just as the green sphere died down, heavily impacting against her body and getting screams of pain as the rays began to quickly burn through the sections of shifting armor covering her body. Compared to the prior 2 layers, it could only feasibly take any one of the attacks for a few seconds until the mercurial material melted away and later reformed. Performing a few aerial maneuvers, the succubus shifted out of the beams while still diving down to me. "You are one determined bitch," I commented before blinking away as she got close, but not before she popped another one of those orbs, making more of the smell from whatever gas was inside to seep into my nose through the plugs. After blinking 40 feet above her, my eyes were slightly blurring with tears from the acrid scent in my nose. Fuck, that was pretty bad. Casting more rays upon Albedo, there was little she could do to try and stop the attacks besides blocking her vital areas with her bardiche. "What more can you do, succubitch? Your armor can barely stop my attacks at this point, you can't use your movement skill anymore, you've wasted all your good tricks when you had the chance, and you're too slow to even keep up with my blinking. This fight is over," I stated to the struggling succubus. "No. I haven't used all my tricks. In fact, I was hoping that I'd never have to use this form as I can barely stand the thought of my love seeing me like this. But for you, I'll make an exception," Albedo said, her voice taking on an inhuman and deeper tone as her yellow eyes glowed even brighter than before. "Fuck, she's a heteromorph race about to use her second form." Before I got the chance to cast a spell to retaliate, the mercurial armor she wore, along with the shards and pieces of her broken armor layers, all became absorbed into her body as she quickly grew in size until she was over 10 feet tall. Her legs grew black fur and changed to become digitigrade as the human-like feet became absorbed into the new legs while her toes merged together into newly made black hooves. Mercurial metal filled with armor pieces flowed along her legs like magma along cracked earth. Her torso was furred on the sides, with more rivulets of metal flowing across it while her chest down to the lower abdominal muscles was covered in the flowing metal shaped like a V. Albedo's arms elongated and thickened like that of a gorilla's as they became covered in fur up to her shoulders while black talons grew from her fingers and were covered in metal to reinforce them. Her face, funnily enough, remained the least changed, aside from great tusks growing up from her lower jaw, her teeth sharpening into sharp fangs, and her ears growing long and pointed. The pair of horns at the side of her head had grown over a foot upwards and curved forwards like an ominous crown that could also be used to impale another as metal covered them to add a metallic shine. The pair of black feathered wings on Albedo's back had grown so that each wing now spanned over 12 feet. In short, Albedo's outward appearance now matched what a horrible monstrous bitch that she truly was. "Aren't you just a sight for sore eyes?" I taunted. I received a roar from the monstrous woman roared at me, and then did something that I hadn't expected until she transformed, making me remember exactly what the racial form that she had become could do. She teleported in front of me despite, law of planar movement, still being active. With barely any time to react, I was able to bring up 3 of my tails to block the swing of her bardiche, burying itself deeply into my tails. "Then I'll just have to rip those eyes out," she screamed in my face. Multiple rays shot out from my free tails, blasting her the beams of foxfire that she blocked from hitting her vitals with a massive forearm. As that happened, she took the chance to swing the bardiche down once again. This time, I used blink to escape 50 feet above her before casting it again, blinking 40 feet north, just as she teleported up to meet me. Recalling what I knew about her form, she was currently transformed as a Nalthashni. They were demons that some succubi could evolve to, though it required a few prerequisites to do so. Seems that her creator got it to happen. Nalthashni are known for taking a beautiful form that appears weak, which would lure players into thinking that it was just a normal succubus. Then, they'd transform into horrific terrors. They were immensely strong, durable, and most importantly, Players would be unable to escape them since they could perform short-ranged teleportation regardless of anti-teleportation measures aside from 10th tier, super tier, and world items. In other words, I blinked again as Albedo slashed at my location, blinking around the battlefield in an endless chase. If she gets lucky at predicting where I would end up next, then I'm in trouble. What an ugly monster, don't you think, sugar tits? Ratatoskra asked as he continued watching the fight from his resting spot. Not exactly. I blinked away, avoiding a decapitating strike, the best another blink to dodge a slash at my torso, time for one more blink to avoid losing an arm, backseat fighting. Well, you can't keep running away from the ugly bitch, I'll tell you that. He replied, earning a roll of the eyes from me. The rodent was correct, though. I couldn't keep running forever, not that I planned to. Blinking once again, I left illusionary copies that scattered from the area just as I blinked away and Albedo appeared. She attempted to kill the copies, but when that didn't work, she used her world item. All that did was give me more time to bounce around the battlefield, creating more scattering copies. 3 seconds of Ginnungogop's obscurement gave me enough time to create 15 more illusionary copies flying around the area, pelting her with watered-down magic attacks as I continued with creating more and more copies. While casting and maintaining the illusions was free, maintaining and moving all of these illusions was mentally draining. This was in addition to the constant blinking that was starting to put a drain on my mana reserves as I was just above half. You cannot escape me forever, whore. Albedo screamed as she teleported on each copy she could find, instantly cutting it down before moving on to the next, until 10 seconds later, she'd activate the world item and clear an area around herself. Ironically, the thing helping her to kill the copies around her was also what was helping me with my setup. Whenever she'd activate that bardiche, I'd lay down a few aerial traps in combination with creating illusionary copies that would continue scattering. As I was expecting her to soon get annoyed and pissed enough to utilize Ginnungogop's more destructive form, I conjured all my traps more than 120 feet away from myself, and more importantly, Albedo's attack. I had to do this quickly before Albedo finally got too annoyed. It was less than 30 seconds that Albedo finally shifted Ginnungogop to its star form. Enough of these games, whore, she shouted before activating the item. That was all I needed. The instant the green sphere appeared, I cast Replicant and summoned my real copy. She blinked away just as I did, with her in the small space within that invisible magic minefield that could fit someone of my size. As for me, I blinked outside of the minefield with an illusion over myself to appear like a randomly flying bird. The last one, aren't you? Still planning to run again? I'll chase you to the ends of the new world and beyond, Albedo shouted as she glared at the single copy hovering before her. Suck you bitch, I never planned to run away from you. In fact, I'm going to beat you with a single spell. My copy said this as a spell array grew on her hands. No. Albedo countered as she appeared before my copy with her bardiche raised above her head. The second that the bitch appeared, 2 things happened. I dropped my bird illusion and threw a maximize magic, reality slash, at her, and then the entire series of traps went off in an inferno of blue flame. A massive roar of pain could be heard coming from Albedo within the inferno as I spotted a few items of interest begin fall out of the bottom of the flames towards the abyss below. One was a horn covered in that mercurial metal that had a clean cut through it. Another, which I was more interested in, was the large and fur-covered right arm of Albedo's, cut a little above the elbow. And grasped tightly in its hand was Ginnungogop. Without hesitation, I blinked under the fire and towards the world item and caught both it, and the arm still holding it, along with Albedo's cut horn. Moments later, all 3 items were stowed away in my storage and I blinked back to where I had been before. Ah. You bitch. Albedo screeched as she clutched her stump of a right arm. The remaining metal of her armor dripped off of her body like water, taking all the remnants of the prior layers of armor with it, and fell to the abyss below. She had used up the last charge of her defensive ability, protecting herself from the damage of the inferno. too bad it didn't protect her from the attack that came right after. Normally, I might disagree. But you touched my daughter, I said from behind Albedo. The bitch turned around and glared daggers at me as she quickly tried to reach into her storage. My copy immediately fired off another, maximize magic, reality slash, severing Albedo's arm and clipping half of one of her wings. She already began teleporting away as I blinked right after her. One thing that I couldn't figure out was if her teleportation skill was mana-based or not. Because if it was the case, then she was liable to be out of mana. Albedo crashed into the ground, just on the edge of the ravine. Her wings couldn't hold her aloft anymore and she wasn't teleporting any longer. As the bitch pushed herself to her feet, I could just make out her speaking to herself, "Can't die, must live for my love. Can't die, the whore still lives. Can't die, Mo." I cut her off with another, maximize magic, reality slash, to her legs, cutting them off. "Ah. No. Must live," she cried, crawling forwards on the stumps of her limbs, leaving a trail of blood behind herself. In her struggles to stay alive, her body began to slowly revert back to its former appearance. This just left a limbless woman in a blood-stained tatters of a white dress crawling forwards. I almost could feel a fledgling amount of respect at her innate will to survive, but she didn't deserve anything more than scorn. Blinking in front of the crawling monster, I could see Albedo's face had multiple burns on it while her right horn had a large section of it missing. Even bested as she was, the woman was able to give me a look of absolute hatred. "Look at you. Broken and battered. You know, if you hadn't been so vain in not using that monstrous form of yours at the beginning of our battle, then you may have had a chance to kill me," I taunted. "Have you come to gloat, whore? Or will you torture me?" "It matters not because I will never break," Albedo spat at me as she tried pushing herself into an attempted standing position. "We'll see about that," I said as my tail wrapped around her throat and I then attempted to read her mind, but for once, the attempt was completely rejected and I was punted out of her mind. This earned a laugh from Albedo. "My loves and Nazaric's secrets are lost to the likes of you." In response, I ripped Albedo's only working wing off with my tails, eliciting a scream of sheer agony. "I don't care. I just wanted to know what other shit you've been setting up that might endanger my family," I said before burning all of Albedo's bleeding wounds with foxfire, searing them shut. She simply gritted her teeth at the pain and gave me a glare. "No matter what, whore, Nazaric will ensure that you and your daughters suffer." I lit her mouth aflame with foxfire, making certain to burn her tongue off before I ended the spell. The skin of her lips and around her mouth, and most certainly inside her mouth, was horrifically burned from the spell. This will help ensure that your tongue doesn't utter another word about Tyre and Nina. My only issue right now is what to do with you. If I kill you, Momonga is likely to resurrect you immediately. He also has a shooting star ring, which means that he can just wish you back. Actually, sugar tits, you could just send her to the UN realm. You know the spell, and if one doesn't know the path, you could get lost forever without some method to teleport out. Ratatoscrew recommended, making me gaze down at the tiny pervert still in my cleavage with a raised brow. "That doesn't stop something like a wish spell from recalling her back," I countered. "Not if someone has a curse of Yggdrasil on them." That was a new one. "And what is a curse of Yggdrasil?" I asked as my body suddenly felt heavier and a bit sluggish. Looking down at my chest, I spotted that the glowing white tree had faded away. Guess that the buff ran out. Ratatoscrew looked at me before laughing. "Seems that Yigi's blessing ran out on ya. You'll probably be a bit weak for a while afterwards, especially with how long ya had it on ya. Be thankful that you're essentially Yigi's grandchild since it woulda killed anyone else, gods included." "Yggdrasil's grandchild?" I questioned as I started feeling a headache while my nose felt stuffier than even the nose plugs should have made them. Pulling the nose and earplugs out, I felt the warm wetness of a nosebleed as my ears also began leaking blood. You think being a pureborn god is all for show? Nah, we were essentially made from Yigi. Your MILF of a mother is one, making ya, as her sexy kid, Yigi's grandchild. Why do I have the weirdest family tree? I questioned while attempting to stem my nosebleed. 'Cause your granny's the world tree. The rodent replied, making me want to sigh for walking into that one, but as for the original question, that curse is what helps keep the hungry worm from escaping. Prevents things, like teleporting away, being scryed by any but Yi and I, losing access to extra-dimensional spatial abilities, or being wished out of prison from happening. I know it 'cause I help Yi watch the worm and use it to secure his locks every few centuries. This made me smile. So, you just apply it to the bitch. I cast, Path of the UN Realm, go inside, throw her into a random spot, and then leave? I asked, to confirm. Right you are, sugar tits. The rodent confirmed with a nod before we both looked at Albedo attempting to squirm from where she was hanging. As she overheard our discussion, she was beginning to realize that Momonga wasn't going to be able to save her from my wrath. Excellent. So, I gestured to the beaten succubus, are you going to go ahead and start this? The rodent pulled a furry paw out and held up two of his fingers. 2 things before I do this. One is a warning, the other is a demand. I wonder what type of warning he had for me. Okay, lay them on me. I let go of my nose and felt confident that my nose wouldn't start bleeding again. For the warning, once I do this, it's done. There is no removal for it, not even dying will free one from this curse, as both Hell and Helheim will reject them from their cold embrace to exist and endure. Yigi will have the memory of whoever has been cursed etched into her memory for eternity. He patted on the chest in warning, with this warning, are you still willing to condemn another soul to an eternity of this fate? Gazing at the succubus, I could see that she was coming to understand exactly what this meant, as there wasn't anyone to save or protect her. I wasn't planning on telling Momonga about this until after I had fully dealt with the bitch. I gave him a warning and a second chance to get his people under control. He had to understand that his people were not allowed to be free to do whatever heinous shit they wanted without dealing with the consequences that followed. My feelings on Momonga are extremely mixed at this moment. I wanted him to be my friend, and I felt that we had been getting close. Close enough that I understood how much what I was going to do to Albedo would hurt him. At the same time, the protective mother inside me didn't give a shit about what Momonga might feel, because I wanted to punish whoever dared to touch my kits and ensure that they would never be able to do so again. The vindictive kitsune within me especially wanted to ensure that Albedo suffered for what she did. Death was too good for her. Yes. I am fully willing to condemn this monster to this punishment. I confirmed. Now, what is your demand? Worryingly, I received that lecherous little grin of his and felt my eyes unconsciously narrow at the rodent. Since Yigi and I have a special connection, that means that I won't need to be pulled back to where I once was at the end of the, Loki's call, duration. If I do this curse, I request that I get to utilize my favorite resting spot whenever I like. Foxfire lit up in my hand at hearing his demand of me. You fucking pervert. What's to prevent me from not creating barbecued squirrel for lunch? Sugar tits, if your MILF of a mother was unable to follow through on her threats to me, what makes you think that you'll do any better when considerably weaker than her? Besides, I'm the warden of the Vorm, and there's pretty much nothing in the 10 realms scarier than Niddy. The little rat said smugly, this is my offer, take it or leave it. There is nothing more annoying in any world than someone who knows that they are the only option to accomplish something, and that they're smug about it. And I got all of that from the furry pervert right now. Fine, I mumbled in agreement. What was that, Princess Sugar Tits? The little shit asked with a taunting grin as if his large ears could hear me. You heard me. Now do it before I change my mind and find a way to punch you off the world tree. I replied tersely. With a laugh, Ratatoskra pulled himself out of his resting place and jumped onto my tail holding Albedo, good doing business with ya. He then turned to Albedo and approached her head until he was able to put a paw on her forehead. I, Ratatoskra, warden of the Vorm and aid of Yggdrasil, enforce her ire, her hatred, and her wrath upon thee. Ye are rejected, death will not bring peace to thine spirit, hell and her realm will not harbor ye. May ye be nothing more than nutrients to her roots, may thine flesh rot and be uneaten, and may thine bones remain unburied and forgotten. Live in eternity with regrets, ye who have earned it. As Ratatoskr invoked these words, it felt like the world was listening. The open space we stood in now felt crowded as the wind, the sky, the plants, the wildlife, and the very ground all listened to what the squirrel said. But the further that Ratatoskr spoke, the more I felt that same ancient presence when I was under the effects of Ratatoskr's blessing. The longer that the rodent said these words, the more I noticed a pressure pushing down upon Albedo, almost like the horizon of a black hole. And upon the last word spoken, a white root seemed to grow from the air in front of the succubus before stabbing into her forehead, eliciting a scream of pain from Albedo before the root pulled away, revealing a symbol reminiscent of a dead tree in a glowing red. Once finished, Ratatoskr returned to bury himself back in his resting place. As promised, the crazy bitch has been permanently cursed. Ready to send her off? Yes, I said, giving Albedo a smug glance while she returned it with a glare. War, a will novar starp until u shuffer. A will retune tum he luv wi at your head en he hansh. The bitch threatened, even with a missing tongue and a burnt inner mouth and lips. The amount of hate required to force oneself to continue speaking through that agony was a mixture between insanity and sheer will. No. You will live the rest of your life knowing that the only one responsible for your predicament is yourself. Suck you bitch. Following this, I cast Path of the UN Realm, which tore open a portal of roots, leading to a labyrinthine realm that the three of us stepped through. As we did this, I took the moment to examine the area. Around us, massive dead tree branches scarred in black, twisted and knotted the realm in all directions alongside the numerous ruins of dead civilizations. Where we stood was one of the calmer areas of this place. Beyond all of the broken branches above the UN realm was the impossible rooted base of the world tree, indescribably large, while a sky of auroras made from mana was beyond that. One very noticeable thing under the world tree was the dark form of a twisted creature that was wrapped and tangled in these roots, which constantly seemed to grow and shift, even if the creature gave a struggle or two against them before ceasing. Then, the dark form shifted what might be its head and opened a massive, glowing crimson eye with a jagged pupil whose edges seemed to constantly move like the teeth of a chainsaw. That eye's gaze fixed down upon the UN realm, and I knew that its attention was on the three of us. Welcome to your new home, crazy bitch. This is the UN realm, a place beneath Igi that was created from all the fallen branches of Igis when the Vorm glaring down upon us attacked her. Hiya, Niddy. Ratatoskr gave a wave to Night Hogru. This earned a roar of anger from the ancient imprisoned dragon. The perverted rodent looked back to me with a grin. Real friendly guy, Niddy is. Anyway, in the UN realm, the laws of the realms break down and twist as the corpse of each of these fallen realms and branches no longer have Igi to give them balance. As such, one must know the rules of where you step, as the laws of one realm might not be the same as the law of another. He wasn't wrong about the rules of this place, as it was a maze in essence. There was danger around every corner, especially from the creatures that called this place home. But this place was also considered by players as one of the best places in all of Yggdrasil to hide things of value and importance. Scattered about the UN realm were places that could be turned into vaults if the guardian to it was defeated. From there, the player would have a secret vault, along with a free guardian to the vault, as the former guardian boss would defend it with its life. Sadly, these guardians were restricted to the vaults and could never leave. Looking to Albedo, I turned the bitch to face me as her eyes trailed over the Eldritch realm. Goodbye forever, suck you bitch. I told her as I looked past her to what looked to be a simple shattered street of cracked stone with dead branches and fallen buildings along it. That simplicity was a lie. Tossing Albedo forwards, not even bothering to hear the quadruple amputee speak, I watched her body skip across 2 meters before the trickiness of the UN realm began. Mid-skip, her body stopped moving forwards and gravity shifted, making her fall to her left. A few feet more, gravity shifted for her again and she fell back down to the ground before phasing through the solid stone floor of this liminal realm. All the while, she screamed curses at me until disappearing. She's dealt with. Since she's not a magic caster, Albedo is going to be trapped here unless someone knows where to find her and can cast that spell, I said in a slight amount of relief. She'll never be able to touch either of my kits again while suffering the fate of never seeing Momonga while persisting in her crippled form. That she is, sugar tits. You're feeling good after all of that? The rodent asked cheerily. Part of me wanted to say that I was, but there was the other part of me that felt worried about potential consequences from this. Namely, consequences with Momonga. I believe so. I simply replied while examining the UN realm a bit longer. Just wondering, would my vault still be here? Or did it disappear with my arrival in the new world? Your vault is still here. No need to worry about that, sugar tits. We could check it out if you wanted. Ratatoskra replied, making me shake my head. I'll see it later since my vault's not going anywhere. Right now, I'm more concerned about Nina and what I will say to Momonga. And honestly, I'm scared of what I should handle first. I answered before turning around and going back through the portal once again, letting it close behind me. Another reason that I didn't want to explore the UN realm was that it was extremely creepy having Nighthawk's eye gazing down at me. Something just felt ominous and revulsive about that eldritch attention on myself. I considered sending a message to Momonga, but I decided against it. I needed a little bit of time to recover and possibly prepare for his retaliation. So, Nina would be my first stop. Nina. After Mom had sent me back to the temple, I found myself sitting in place for a short while as my mind tried to process everything that I just went through. I was taken, tormented and tortured, discovered that I wasn't even human anymore, was rescued by Mom, and then there was that armored woman that had actually been able to injure Mom. I found myself looking at my hands, and more specifically, the sharp nails that were growing and sharpening. Then my eyes caught sight of the ring that was still on my finger from those spider monsters. With utter haste, I ripped it off my finger and threw it across the room. The sound of metal hitting against stone was loudly clear in my ears. Looking around, I spotted a mirrored surface and got off of Mom's bed before walking over to it. Looking through the mirror, two things took my notice before I began looking on top of my head. The first were my eyes, now a complete glowing gold with slitted pupils, just like Mom's. Then, there were my teeth, with the canines elongated and sharpened that I tentatively felt with my tongue. My teeth felt so foreign to me. Yet, at the same time, they were so natural to my body now. Then, I flicked my golden gaze to the top of my head where a steadily growing pair of brunette fox ears rose above my hair. Feeling the side of my head where my human ears used to be, there was now a furred cartilage that went directly upwards. As my hand rose, I felt the furred entrance of my ear an inch or so higher from where it used to be, and twice as larger. I couldn't find it in myself to put my fingers any closer to the new orifice, especially because of how sensitive my entire ear currently was. Just my simple touching made the hair on the back of my neck rise in response. My growing ears were a lot more sensitive than my growing tail. Twisting my body to get a clear look at it as it stuck out through a hole strategically placed on the dress I wore, the brunette appendage was 7 inches in length and still visibly growing. I was actually able to make it move now, which was an alien feeling to experience. The prehensile limb could move, curl, and slightly twist. I could only imagine what more I might be able to do with this limb in the future once it was fully grown. And then there was the possibility of me growing up to 9 of these limbs in the future. Aside from my physical changes, there was my sense of smell. I could still smell the stew I had earlier today. Mom and Lucrute's scents moved about the room, mostly concentrated on where she slept and where he sat. Beyond that, the other thing I could smell which was overpowering against that of human and kitsune was the coppery scent of blood and the rot of corpses. That made me worried about what might have happened to my friends when I was taken from the battle. I saw Peter's sword, but I had been unable to tell if it had been my friend or not who carried it. Trailing on this thought soon brought me to an entirely different dilemma. How was I even going to explain the changes that I underwent? What if someone that was either not one of my friends, my family, or the kitsune were to see and recognize me? There was definitely still a whole lot of people that were probably outside, and all of them were probably from Rantle. If someone were to know who I was, then I'd have no idea on where to go from there. I'm just a bit lost and overwhelmed on what to do right now. A sort of decision paralysis overcame my mind as so many thoughts on what happened, what my next steps were, how my future might look, and even more overloaded me. I couldn't say for certain how long I stood there like that until a voice behind me spooked me out of my thoughts. "Hey, kiddo." I found myself slightly jumping until my mind processed multiple things, all at once: a scent of fire, a rainstorm, blood, plants, and something I couldn't put a name to coalesced around the smell of Mom. And it was her voice that spoke from behind me. "Mom." I turned around and pulled the woman into a hug, not even slightly bothered by how drenched in water her body and clothes were. She returned the embrace and I looked up to her face to see her smiling at me. Yet, a twitching by her chest brought my eyes down to see the form of a squirrel's head poking out from her cleavage. "Appears that you're a MILF as well, sugar tits." The squirrel spoke. I saw him look up at Mom's face with a grin on his furry lips. Mom, why can that squirrel speak? And why did it call you a MILF and sugar tits?" I found myself immediately asking. Mom had a dry look on her face as she gazed down at the animal with narrowed eyes. Name's Ratatoskra, the handsome squirrel with many deserved titles. You must be either Taya or Nina, if I recall correctly." Ratatoskra interrupted Mom as he pulled his body out from Mom's cleavage and hopped onto my right shoulder, as if examining me. "I'm Nina," I hesitantly answered. "As for what I called your mom, well, she's got an amazing pair on her, earning her the name Sugar Tits. As for MILF, it stands for Mother I'd like to F. He didn't get to say another word as one of Mom's tails slapped him away into a wall. He made a loud smacking noise upon impacting the wall along with a groan. I try to ignore what the pervert says. Unfortunately, he'll probably be hanging around us for the time being. Mom explained as she barely paid the squirrel a glance. But enough about that. How are you doing right now? Are any of the changes bothering you at all? I had to smile at the way Mom immediately flipped her mood from annoyance at Ratatoskra to concern about me. It's just strange. I can hear and smell in a way that I couldn't before, and a lot of these changes just feel so different. I answered. Gently, Mom moved her hands up to my growing ears and lightly touched and examined them, making the hairs at the back of my neck stand up once more, but also feeling a little pleasant. Your ears are likely going to be extremely sensitive until they're fully grown, since the nerves in them are all new and still forming. For kitsune, they're one of the more sensitive spots on our bodies since they're finely tuned to hear noise. As Mom explained this, she pulled away from me and began to speak in what I guessed was a whisper. "How loud does this sound to you?" To me, it sounded like she was normally talking. "Very audible," I answered. "Good. It means your hearing doesn't have any issues." Mom looked over my shoulder, and I tried to follow her gaze as she looked at my tail. It had now grown to 8 inches since I last saw it a few minutes ago. Then, one of her tails approached mine and gently prodded it. Much to my surprise, my tail instinctively wrapped itself around hers as Mom's softly did the same, locking our two limbs together. "Your tail has a good grip, even though it's still growing." "I didn't mean to do that," I admitted, looking from our locked tails to Mom's eyes. She simply gave me a smile and tousled my hair. "You don't need to feel like you've done anything wrong. It's an instinctual reaction kitsune do with those close to them, since it's a way to display affection. I did it with my mother just as you are doing it with me," she consoled me as heat started rushing to my face at learning the reason behind this instinctive reaction. "By the way, kiddo, we'll likely need to go over the new set of instincts that you'll be dealing with." Whatever I may have been thinking before, I was quickly pulled out of it and found myself asking, "What instincts?" Compared to humans, we're a bit more animalistic at times. You will probably get certain urges, like a preference to live in large burrows, feelings of protectiveness, mating urges, and a few others. I'll have to help walk you through them. Mom explained, making me slightly nervous at the concept. Why did this even happen? How did I turn into a kitsune? I questioned. Mom appeared slightly guilty. It's my fault, even if unintentionally. You see, as I'm a goddess, conceptualism is something of which that I'm connected to. Since I see you and Tyr as my daughters, and you and Tyr see me as your mother, especially after you both drank my blood, my divine nature is making the connection we have very literal. You getting splattered with my blood when I was growing my tail just sped that process up. Sorry about that, kiddo. I shook my head at her apology. Changing to an entirely different race is surprising, though I'm not upset about it, Mom. But did I hear correctly when you said Tyr also drank your blood? Mom nodded. It happened sometime when I was still unconscious. My spirit had been brought to Mom's realm. Mom gave me a knowing smirk, Grandma Inori's realm. From there, I saw Tyr appear before us before disappearing. Why did you appear in Grandma's realm? I questioned. Because, as her daughter, I'm innately connected to the realm of foxes even if I am not currently living there. Though, it wasn't a bad experience since I got to see Mom again and she helped to explain and clarify a few things for me. Additionally, Mom held out a lock of her extremely long hair. It seems that you weren't the only one to get pranked by Mom. We were silent for a few moments until we burst out laughing. Eventually, we settled down enough to talk again. Any idea how long your blessing from Grandma is going to last? I still have no clue as to how long mine will. I asked while absent-mindedly playing with my own hair. Mine's permanent, unlike yours, until I figure out how to dispel it. As for yours, I've got good news and bad news for you. My eyes narrowed suspiciously at Mom when she said this. What's the good news? Your blessing will end within your lifetime. Mom quickly answered. Bad news? It'll be 2 or 3 centuries before that happens. My eyes fully widened at Mom's answer, but I'll be long dead. My protest was cut short by Mom playfully poking me in the forehead. Nope. You're a kitsune now, kiddo. Biological age doesn't matter for you anymore since you're immortal. By the gods, Mom was right. I really was immortal now. I ended up attaining what others have fought, stolen, researched, and killed for by complete accident. I would theoretically live forever. A lot for you to consider, huh? I gave a nod to Mom's question. Then don't focus on it. Enjoy what you have now, and by the time you notice, it will barely even bother you. I'll try. I replied back, the massive revelation still weighing on my mind. Are there any further surprises that I should expect from becoming a kitsune? Mom gave me a wry grin in answer. Since you and Tyr are both becoming kitsune due to the conceptualization of me being your mother. Well, you already know what Grandma and I look like. Saying this, Mom gestured to her body and I quickly got the picture. How long until that happens? I asked while looking down to examine how body currently looked like. It should be a bit of a while, kiddo. It's just, you should probably expect to become bigger as you get older. She replied, alleviating some of my worries of just waking up from bed one day with a figure like Mom's. That was when I smelt squirrel and plants grow suddenly closer as a weight appeared on my shoulder. Looking over, I saw Ratatoskra sitting there with a grin. Did I hear right, sugar tits? Your cute kid is going to grow up to be a knockout like you currently are? 'Cause if that's the case, then I really made the best decision of sticking around. Why Ratatoskra was cut off when one of Mom's tails struck out and wrapped the squirrel in its embrace like a snake would its prey. Pull any of that lecherous shit with either of my daughters and I will castrate you with a spoon and force feed you your tiny testicles. Got it? Mom threatened with a glare at the pervert. Warning, noted. The squirrel wheezed out in reply. Mom's tail gave a final squeeze of warning before finally unwrapping from his body. Ratatoskra took a moment to gulp down some air before warily looking back at Mom. Our deal still stands, right? What deal? Mom's eyes narrowed into a glare before she sighed and nodded. Yes, you perverted bastard. The squirrel quickly jumped from my shoulder and onto Mom's before diving into her cleavage like he was at the start. At least I have one good thing going for me. Mom, what deal is Ratatoskra talking about? Another sigh came from her before she answered, I made a deal with the pervert for his help. In exchange he gets to reside here whenever he likes. What kind of help would you need to agree to Ratatosk's help? I questioned, worrying about what the answer could be to make Mom, a goddess, request aid from another. Was it because of that armored woman? There was silence for a few moments as Mom's golden eyes searched mine, determining whether she should answer. Finally, Mom made her decision as a pair of chairs appeared next to us, and I took the unspoken invitation to sit down as Mom did. Celicia Nina, I need you to promise not to share with anyone else what I'm about to tell you. Can you please do this for me? Mom asked, invoking my full name which told me just how serious this was. I promise, Mom. I answered, earning a soft smile from her. To begin, let's get it out of the way that I'm not originally from this realm. Until over a month ago, I didn't know this place even existed. I already figured that part out a while ago, but I didn't interrupt, but somehow, I ended up being pulled here by an unknown power or entity. The only small caveat is that I wasn't the only one to arrive here. Who else came with you? Back home, we had guilds of people that would be created for any number of reasons. Some would rise as others were destroyed on a constant basis. One consistent thing about all of them is that they are filled with powerful people like myself. Among them was a guild formed by a group of monsters that had been treated like outcasts to be hunted down and killed for sport. One day, these monsters banded together and decided that if they should be hated and treated the villain, then they would embrace it. As such, they went to work creating extremely powerful monsters who could individually kill entire cities on a whim, to guard their guild from all intruders. Over time, though, members of this guild began to leave, one by one, until only one of them remained. His name is Momonga, a lich cursed with muted emotions and empathy. He, along with the entire guild and the monsters residing within, arrived here at the same time I did. Momonga is one of the few members of the guild that isn't actively malicious. He's also the leader of this guild and all of these monsters typically obey him. But there comes the true problem, Momonga is typically apathetic to most things, the actions performed by the monsters of the guild are one of these things. Now, what might happen when an apathetic man, who sees these monsters as his children that can do no wrong, is told to restrain these children and prevent them from doing what they wish to do? Of these things that they like to do is horrific and brutal atrocities. I felt my heart quicken as I now considered this. An entire base of monsters that could fight on Mom's level monsters was horrifying to imagine. Mom just had to fight one of these creatures for me, and it seemed like it hadn't been easy for her. But that also made me ponder another thing. Mom said she had to use her most destructive spell against the vampire from a few weeks ago. And this vampire, Mom said, was from the same land she hailed from. Along with the two new adamantite plate adventurers that fought with her. Named Nobe and Moman. An adventurer that almost never took his armor off except for that one feast that Mom and Lucrute attended. Lucrute had mentioned how the man without his helmet equipped looked off, and Lucrute's gut feelings were typically right. And with how powerful Mom was, what's to say that a powerful lich didn't know a way to disguise his appearance among the living? Moman and Momonga. Mom, is the adventurer Moman actually Momonga? I asked, and from the expression of shock and surprise that filled her face at my deduction, I was correct.